Hello, I'm Jack Rickard.
I am fine. I'm in a new sweater, actually. This was a Christmas present.
Well, let's see if they pass our energy tax.
Yes.
Those will be very valuable.
Now you'll be very valuable. I've always
get into sweater wearing.
Mothers and mother-in-laws tell you to wear sweaters.
That's right. And I've often been referred to as a mother. It is 2013.
Yes, it is. It is our first show in 2013.
January 4th.
January 4th.
I bailed on Richard this week.
Mm-hmm.
He made me mad. He sent some ear drives in a box. They got broken. So I left and went to Chicago with my wife.
Yes, you did.
And I had an interesting tale there. They have a museum of science and industry.
I think I went to an aquarium there years ago. I think there's an aquarium there also, but not a museum of science.
It was between the aquarium and the Museum of Science and Industry. So we went to the Museum of Science and Industry and had a dinner at an Italian restaurant that had an aquarium.
Okay, that's close enough. Okay.
I thought so. But the highlight of the museum for me was an actual one of the original Zephyr railroad trains, the full train.
Okay, yes.
This was produced in 1934. I really have always been fascinated with the technology out of the 1930s. I have two DC-3s. 1938 Packard that belongs to one of the DC-3s. It's a pet.
I've seen the pet, yes, sir.
And so the whole 30s period, culminating in the 1939 World's Fair, was our most intense period of, in some ways, of technological development. But it was also, aside from being a horrible period of economic malaise, somewhat similar to today, but it was the most intensely optimistic period for technology. They believed that technology could solve all social ills.
I can see that.
This train was a very streamlined looking stainless steel train that went 112 miles an hour. They called it the Silver Streak.
I remember, yeah, okay. A Zephyr.
Years later, there was actually a movie
called
Gene Wilder
yes.
and what was his name?
Oh gosh,
Richard Pryor.
Richard Pryor, yes, sir. Gene
Called
Wilder.
the Silver Streak.
The Silver Streak.
If you haven't seen it, it has the best train crash scene ever filmed.
Yes, I've enjoyed that. I've seen it.
I've watched
it several times. Yes, yes.
Funny movie. But that launched a whole design school where everything, steam irons, toasters, vacuum cleaners, all had this kind of can openers, had this streamlined steel, shiny steel, chromium look. And if you didn't make something that looked like that, it wouldn't sell. And so all our vacuum cleaners and everything. So this 30s period, but the DC-3, when we opened the 1930s, cars were very square looking and airplanes were made out of fabric and wood. By the end of the decade, the trains and the aircraft were shiny aluminum or steel and very streamlined looking and futuristic looking. And in the 1939 World's Fair, they had the City of Tomorrow, the 1960s, with flying cars and all that.
I have one short anecdotal. My dad went to the 1939 World's Fair, and that is as a child, and he always told that story. And he saw The Wizard of Oz on the picture screen there.
Yes,
and that was the first color movie he had ever seen in his life, and it was at the 1939
It was one
World
of the very
Fair.
early color movies. And that was the period.
Yes, exactly.
And the people who were little boys in the 1930s went on to essentially launch the space age with Apollo and Gemini programs of the 60s and so forth. That was when they reached adulthood. That was a big deal, was to go fulfill that dream. And so much of what we have today really derives out of a relatively short period of design in the 1930s, from about 32 or 33 up to 1939. By the end of the decade, all cars were streamlined looking, swoopy looking things. In fact, a gal is going to bring us a 1937 Lincoln Continental to look at. She wants us to convert it to electric drive. She's
That
over
sounds
here in
interesting.
Illinois somewhere.
Yeah.
And so I told her, bring it ahead, we'll look at it. John Stevens, Revolutionary War hero, obsessed, kind of like Jack Rickard on electric cars. He was about steam-powered wagons, railroads, basically. And in fact, he had one in his lawn that had a steam boiler and a cylinder, and it turned a gear, and that turned a bigger gear, and that gear rolled along a linear cog in the yard.
I can, okay.
And the
I can
wheels
see
weren't
that.
powered. This gear kind of
Yeah.
crawled it along this cog. There was a brochure, a flyer printed up and passed around, extolling the dangers and horrors to life, limb, and your children by this man's invention.
The cop, okay.
Of course, funded by the local coach stage companies and
Yeah.
delivery companies.
Yeah. Scare the
Again,
public, yeah.
The existing status quo wanted to spread fear, uncertainty, and doubt among the local population about this new invention, the steam locomotive. And it's 200 years later, and it's the same thing, and it's by the same kind of
It
people.
is, yes.
And for the same reasons. But they had locomotives from 1825, 1830, 1835, right up through some of the largest steam locomotives. They claimed that steam was about 6% efficient.
Yeah,
at
it's not very
converting,
efficient, no, no.
fuel to forward motion, and it took up to 200 pounds of coal to go 1 mile.
Yeah.
The firemen stood there and shoveled coal into the fire that ran the
The
boiler.
boiler, yep. The fire
And
to the
it
boiler.
could take 200 pounds of coal to move one of these trains 1 mile. The Burlington Zephyr, by contrast, was a diesel electric. And it had a big diesel engine that turned a generator. Generator made electricity, and the electricity drove electric motors, 300 horsepower electric motors on the wheels, and it would go 300 miles an hour, go 112 miles an hour. And they claimed it was 40%
I'm gonna look,
efficient.
yeah, the Zephyr.
And so, yeah, the Silver Streak.
Well,
And they made 8 of these trains,
Yeah.
and they were going all over the country, just and they would go very fast. This one set a record going from Denver to Chicago in 13 hours, over 1,000 miles, and that cut the time in half. About the same time, 1934, Shirley Temple flew in a DC-3 from California to New York.
and that was a big deal.
8 hours.
And you got champagne, I think, with that. It was a big deal to fly, which anyhow. Well, I did not, now that you bring up the subject of railroads, I was at a party over the holidays, and I was privy to a conversation with a person involved in the railroad. And without my prompting, he actually began discussing very similar to your concept, that you could put some sort of electrification in pavement and recharge the cars as they passed along. And the point would be that people are thinking that way. And I didn't prompt them, nor was I actually in the beginning of the conversation. I just heard him. I said, well, that's interesting that people are starting to think that way, that relate railroads to the electric vehicle
Yes.
business. He said, well, I just, these tracks work. And So it was interesting.
Well, there were a couple of interesting things. It was slow at first. You recall my standard S adoption curve, 1825 to 8. I mean, this guy had this idea in the 1780s and had one working in 1825, and then 1825.
1925.
No.
1820.
1825, 1835, 1845. 20-year period there.
Yeah.
It didn't progress very much. It was a couple of wooden barrels of water in back, firewood and coal,
Yeah, okay.
a steam burner, and a piston connected to some wheels, and usually another attachment to the wheels that was connected to a valve. And this valve went back and forth and put steam on one side of this driver plate, and pushed it this way, and the exhaust went out around the valve, and then it moved the valve and it put steam in this side and the exhaust out that side, and so it would go back and forth. And they were all pretty much that same design. Bigger wheels with each iteration, bigger cylinders,
Yes.
bigger valves.
I went and looked at the when the Burlington Northern came through here in Cape. I went down right by your house and saw one. Which, guess they gave the presentation, and you know what I learned?
What?
That is where the term elbow grease comes in. The moving arm is an elbow, and they grease them very often because of the wear and tear. And my parents growing up actually told me to work harder to put elbow grease, and I thought it meant that, see, I use my elbow so much that I had to like lubricate it, but it actually came out of that locomotive steam engine era. So it was elbow grease.
Do we have any EV news?
Well, not particularly bright news, but just off the wire. Now this broke just a few minutes, about 4 o'clock our time, and I picked it up. I was monitoring the site, but COTA has furloughed a number of workers, and they didn't release the numbers. And
They wouldn't tell the numbers?
they haven't told the numbers yet. So there may be, but mid-December, 15% of its workforce, or about 50 people, were laid on. They did release that they intend to stay in business and plan to keep the staff and the personnel on hand to keep the product rolling. So that is probably not a surprise. Then they waited till the first year. Second part of the news, which is, how do you think Fisker Karma cars got burned out, or why do you think they got burned up in Superstorm Sandy?
Well, there's a lot going on there. They have filed a claim with their insurance carrier.
Exactly.
Which they were insured for these cars.
Yes.
And this is a $330 million claim.
Yes.
The insurance company has decided not to pay
Yes.
it.
That's good.
And Fisker is suing them. This is a illustration of insurance companies.
Yes.
And they've kind of adopted the posture of the government. They're going to make you safe from something if you give them money.
If anything.
And then if you give them money, if it actually, the
Exactly.
bet is that it won't happen. If it actually does happen, the fallback bet is, let's just not pay it and see if they sue us.
Yeah. See if they can win. Yeah.
And then if you sue them and win, then
They pay us,
They
yes.
pay. And I mean, it's got to be so bizarre why anybody would give these people money. I carry almost no
Yes.
insurance on
Yeah.
anything, and that's one of the reasons. They're vermin. They think they're a second pseudo government.
Yes.
The part of the issue is the Fiskers had been recalled and were there awaiting cooling fans.
Yes.
There was a cooling fan.
Yes, that is
marked
it.
on a
You
Fisker.
got it.
And so the Fiskers, they had 300 of them piled up there waiting for fans, and that's when Sandy hit and flooded them.
They were being held. That is
And
correct.
so why that would be any particular issue to the insurance company, I'm unclear, but in any event, they weren't in transit. They should have been covered, but it's one of the many missteps.
the way-
Fisker and COTA will not be with us much longer.
And you're exactly right. So That is.
I can usually make this stuff up.
You cannot make that up.
No, I can make it up and usually be closer than the initial report.
Yeah.
And as it starts to come out, now how can that be? I've just followed these things for so long, not just in electric cars, but technology, that they just have a certain spin to them every time.
Yep.
And it's kind of like basketball. There's really 7 plays in basketball. You can take the chalk and do anything you want to with it. It's going to be one of those 7 plays. I mean, there's not really even a way to vary them very much. You can execute them better or worse, but there's 7, and that's it.
Yeah.
And it's kind of the same thing. There's 7 ways of talking about technology to try to prevent putting out the truth, and I know the 7.
Yeah, and that's like, well, read your insurance policies, because apparently a storm comes along.
If you don't buy one, you don't have to read it.
Apparently, yeah.
What else you got?
That is the top sort of.
The Volt sold 2,685 in December.
Pretty good numbers there.
About what, 1,560?
1,500, yes.
So the Volt is picking up some steam.
Yes.
At least for Christmas.
We have.
They have 3,000 dealers. About 300 of them are actually selling Volts. But the ones who are. And again, it kind of gets to be sort of a cluster deal. If you sell a few Volts, then people around there learn about the Volts and want to buy Volts. If you sell 1 Volt in a year, it doesn't bring in a lot of new Volt guys. It's an acculturation thing. It's very clearly an acculturation thing.
The California State Department of General Services is going to get 10 new Nissan Leafs. So the state governments are buying some of these and adding to their electric fleet. So the State and Consumer Services Secretary, Ana Caballero, said this is our first step to achieving. So there is a market, somewhat, it appears to be, in some of the government entities. So there may be a note there that they may want converted vehicles too. What do you think the most popular EV story was of 2012 on the Autoblog? The most popular clicked on story.
Oh, it'd be something about Tesla.
Yes, it was the actual test drive report of the Tesla Model S.
Well,
so that at least gives you some.
It turns out these numbers that they gave us, like mine's 2783, part of the disconnect is they don't mean anything.
Well, every number means something.
No, it really doesn't mean anything.
Every word means something.
They have so many priorities as to what gets built that have nothing to do with the numbers, that the numbers are essentially meaningless. First, they're only going to make 85 kilowatt cars. So if you have a low number but a lower battery size, you're out of it till they start that battery.
Okay.
Then various interior components have been variously available. And so it depends on what you configured for the interior components when your car is built. And so it's actually meaningless. They have people that have put down money for a slot 5 months ago that have a car. I put mine down 14 months ago. I don't have one. And there are people earlier than I am with numbers 600, 700 that have never gotten their car.
Man.
They are pretty much dropping all pretense at ever doing anything they said they would do, and they're running out of money again. So
we prayed for them.
Yes, I would really be butt sore if Tesla goes the way of Coda and Fisker and these other ones. But they're starting to make all the right moves to get there.
Oh.
Didn't you say they opened a couple of charging stations in New York?
They have two, one in Massachusetts and one in Maryland and one in Massachusetts. That is correct. So they are moving at least some into the East Coast. So
they appear to be striving manfully and heroically to snatch defeat out of the jaws of victory.
Yeah.
And I do not understand why, but I never do.
You know, I knew the business something, and I always saw that first car just as something that they just put 1,500, 2,000 of them and hit a home run and get out of it, you know, at a time, and I never saw it. Well, there is a couple, you know, they are trying to link up to where they can get all the way around now, so that is correct. They are trying to be able to go in a Tesla Model S from Portland to New York City. So charge stations all along. So you are about 300 to 400 miles apart eventually is their goal. So you have to go south, though, through Phoenix and down through Texas, and all around the East Coast. I know, okay. Average,
what else you got?
average fuel economy isn't coming up, and it's pretty solid in 2008. It is due to the impact of plug-in hybrids and electrics, and we've gone from, we're up to 23.8 miles per gallon on all the vehicles sold, and that is up from 20.8 in 2008.
It is up significantly.
So life is going.
What is the fleet average for 2012?
Fleet average is 23.8.
23.8.
That's decent.
Yeah, 2 years ago it was about 21.6. So that is up quite a bit.
And we're having some impact.
23.8.
So the world is having some, and the new buzzword, of course, is MPGE.
Well, yeah.
Mile count and electric.
And there's actually, I've been reading some things, the utility companies are in some malaise because very flat increase in usage. And it's primarily that more efficient appliances are coming online. And so the what used to be a steady 8% per year growth is now about flat.
Yep.
They
Good.
can't get people to use electricity enough. They would love you to go buy an electric car.
Well, I have my main story.
All right.
Why Norwegians love electric vehicles more than the rest of the world.
Huh.
They love them in Norway.
My edge came from a guy named Arnold Lundskog from Norway. And he was going to build cars here in the U.S. and import them to Norway as electric cars. The fire on the Princess of Norway ferry caused them to sort of ban converted cars.
Yes.
But it's very interesting. Norway has a relatively small population, highest per capita income in the world, far beyond the U.S.'s, and sort of semi-socialist state that owns a lot of North Sea oil.
That probably helps.
But they don't have that much in the way of roads. Very mountainous area. And so all their people can afford any car they want. So they don't want them clogging up the roads with them. To register a new car in Norway, what would you think that would cost?
I have no idea. $1,500.
$100,000.
Holy smokes.
But they will waive that if it's an electric car.
Well, interesting.
And that's the real reason.
That's the real reason they love them.
Now, what did they say the real
They
reason?
said that it was the comfort incentives, which is being able to drive in the bus lane so they can avoid rush hour traffic and park in free city places. And that means they can park in special places that allow them to avoid some of the other.
The real reason is you can buy a new car and not have to pay $100,000 registration
That makes
fee
sense.
to bring the car into the country and register it.
That would work for me.
And
I would be in an electric car for that.
but they want to sell that oil. They don't want to burn it, and so they have significant incentives for electric cars. Well, I have some stuff.
Let's
we
talk
haven't
about that.
done much in the way of viewer videos here recently.
No?
We have a story so old, I'll have to refresh your memory. Several years ago, I had this brilliant idea that I would have a contest, and whoever had the best project,
I remember that.
we would give them $20,000 worth of components. This was like 50 CALB
batteries. I remember that.
net gain, Hort 9.
I think I loaded that.
Magnetics, controller, air conditioning compressor, just all sorts of things. The young man who won this, and it was done sort of by ballot. The problem was, this was a disaster for me personally. We asked them what they wanted to do with this, and I pictured a couple lines and the kind of car. Some of these people wrote 25-page essays, and in fact, we had over 1,000 entries.
Yes.
And I had to read all of this. And I asked the sponsors to each nominate 2, and I think we nominated 2, and that got us down to 10 or 12 finalists.
I remember all of it.
Our viewers voted on them, and a young man named Brandon Hollinger from Lancaster, Pennsylvania, was just very good with a video camera.
I remember all that.
And he made a video in the last week and got people to vote for him in this contest. And won the pile of stuff. He had converted a Saab, a very nice looking car, but lead acid, which he's since upgraded to lithium. And now does, he's done 119 mile drives with it.
Oh, awesome.
Beautiful car. He's done 2 Miatas, one for his parents and one for somebody else. And his contest car was an Austin FX1 taxi, a London taxi.
Yes,
and,
I was there. Yes, I remember. Yeah.
And he has had quite a few issues with this, including sending off the transmission to have a motor adapter made and kind of getting ripped off for about 6 months before he got it back. And but he has got it back, and he has continued to work on it, and it's not done yet. This is the car that keeps on giving. He's never going to
They all do that.
Suffer from my car doesn't need me anymore, empty nest syndrome.
Because then you have to sell them.
I don't know that he's ever going
You
to
have to, if they don't need you, you have to sell them.
Right, you have to start another one.
Yes.
Let's take a look. He sent in a video showing the latest work on the Austin FX1.
Well now, with the Austin FX4 London Taxi all stripped down, we're ready to completely redefine the vehicle's drivetrain with an 11-inch electric motor, 1990 Mustang transmission, and a custom-built drive shaft. Speaking with some professionals, I learned that the appropriate drive shaft angles are critical to avoiding harmonic vibration and noise. So that's where Benji Jr. comes in. This will be our first collaboration. He's done tons of custom work at his own shop and is a real perfectionist. Not to mention a real pleasure to work with. Allowing drive shaft angles to dictate the position of the motor, we quickly found that we'd have to mount the motor lower than the car's existing frame would allow. The front subframe would have to be altered, i.e., remove a chunk from the frame. We were able to keep this internal frame piece by sliding it forward about 1.5 inches. Of course, it's our goal to maintain structural integrity during this process.
So how can we be strangers? He's got no personality. It's just a clever imitation of the people on TV. A line for every situation.
Unfortunately, the motor angle was still off by about 1.5 degrees, so we needed to lower the motor about another 1/2 inch. hoping to reuse this front frame piece as it's important structurally, and it's a very ideal place to mount radiators and the air conditioning condenser. Once we had the driveline angles set up where we wanted them, we were ready to fabricate transmission and motor mounts. We repositioned these mounts much lower than they were originally, using 1/4-inch steel and some gussets I made up that are not visible in these shots.
I can be you, and you can be me. Everyone's happy and everyone's free. Here in my
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
I've got a few news items, kind of on a personal level. I was asked back in June to contribute to a high-end homes magazine with distribution in the UK, United Arab Emirates, South Africa, Portugal, and Spain. Kind of a random opportunity, but I'm always happy to help spread the word about the benefits of going electric, even if they did change my title. Also, locally, I was invited to take part in a press event announcing a few new charging stations in the area. Even if they don't get a ton of use, it's probably a good idea to get stations out there to, help people get over some of the psychological hurdles facing the mass adoption of EVs. Considering my last 4 years of driving electric, I predict that about 90% of charging will happen at home and at work. And lastly, as the electric taxi project starts to take shape, it's encouraging to come across articles like this one in December's Current Events.
I don't know if I flew out at one time or how that got bent like that. It's been that way for a while. Start all over.
When I went to have the drive shaft altered to accommodate the new slip yoke, I learned it was too damaged to use, so we had to have a new one built from scratch. And finally, one of my favorite parts of an electric car conversion. If you're running a DC motor, once it's installed, you can take a single 12-volt battery and a set of jumper cables and have a little fun.
Joder, si está cogiendo por el motor, sí. Con una batería nada más.
I also cleaned up the brake pedal in preparation for the next item on the list. Install all new brake lines.
Good show, Brandon.
Yes, it is. We certainly appreciate it.
I'm fascinated
Kurt,
by this young man. He's kind of a poster child in that no real automotive experience, no real mechanical skills. He's a saxophone player, fine.
That's the way. That's why America is great.
But he is politically conscious, kind of a young liberal green type thing. But he has taken it on as a mission, and he wants to make a business out of it, converting cars and selling components and so forth.
We're right behind you.
I told him you're
We'll help
all
you all
over
we
it,
can.
girlfriend. Anything I can do, we're in. Nothing would please me more, but this car could be very interesting. It'll be like an event car. He sees taking, name acts to the convention centers.
Now
and
that,
so forth.
now hold on, did everybody see the light bulb? Which has been discussed, and I remember several discussing them. The electric car and the ride itself could be of entertainment value, and yes, the limo, event cars, public use cars, possibly, I thought even the drug identification dare cars for police departments, and those of you out there that may be looking for business opportunities, those markets may pay the premium to get the interest up in their subject matter. So, yes, that's a very good point.
Well, good show, Brandon. Keep us abreast. I
Keep
can't
us
wait
on
to see
top.
that rolling in some sort of, celebrity wedding or.
Yes.
But it's a natural thing. I've been playing a little bit this week. If you recall, we did some work last week on our instrumentation for Speedster Nippon, which is coming very close to completion. It's really down to kind of nasty weather here.
Yes, it was
But
a
I'm
rough
running
week.
out of
Yes.
reasons not to drive it off the lift and go for a spin.
I know. I'm ready.
There are some software issues. I have not gotten the new function in HP EVS's software. It's supposed to give me a RPM output out of pin 2. For some reason, I don't have that working. Some things like that are really almost software issues.
Yeah.
Yep. And this car is a go. I pulled the JLD out and put wires to all the relays back there. I'm going to do some cunning things with interlocking the car and shutting it down if
That's
it's,
okay.
get to certain amp hours. But it's getting where it doesn't need me too much anymore.
Good.
I'm
Because
afraid
I
we're going to have
I would like, I'm ready.
Sam come pick it up. It's the best car we've ever done, and it's not going to be mine very long.
Well,
I noticed you have done some work on the you and Shane on the
simulator.
on the
Cobra?
Cobra.
Yes, we did we got the hood props mounted properly so that the hood opens to the full length.
I would open this hood and lean into the car, and it would bang my head, falling on me. We developed a cutting technique of using vice grips
Yes,
to
which
hold it
we had to
open.
take a few bolts out.
And I finally asked Richard, who used to make them, for Christ's sake,
I know.
toppers for pickup trucks that I assumed had.
They have gas props on them. I
Gas
sold
props.
hundreds of thousands of them.
Well, why is this taking so much?
It had to be properly and responsibly engineered.
So I said, well, since you did that, why don't you put me some of those
I know.
gas shocks on this hood, where when I open it, it opens, and close it, and it closes. Well, he made one run at it. Apparently, he didn't understand about it being open.
All the way. It
and
was a
then
little
being
low.
closed.
But it looked good. It did look good. We'll give it that.
It looks better.
It looks better now, so we have completed it.
So we're doing some final trimming on the Cobra for Paul at Aptum Motors. And but I've been playing with the Machina. In fact, this is another thing that by entering an order for 30 of them, I think I got it off of the list of things to do
There you go.
and moving rapidly towards the list of things that have been done. In fact, they're supposed to send me 30 of these next week, and we will make them available in our online store. What this is, they call it a Makina, an Arduino automotive circuit board. It is the Arduino Mega, really, which uses an Atmel 2560 chip.
Okay.
But they have done their own version of the board, somewhat specialized. They've done some initial hardening of it. It has a bigger power supply
Okay.
that's a little bit more resistant, so you can use 8 to 30 volts DC, an automotive 12 volt.
Automotive 12 volt. Okay. I'm following you.
And it'll produce plenty of 12 volt, 5 volt, and 3.3 volt power for any of your peripherals.
Now, I have to just ask my dumb question because that's required.
That's your job, man.
That is my job to do here, which the motherboard is much more complex than just on and off switches. That it can,
The motherboard.
this type of a module or of a board can actually calculate and receive an input piece of data and determine an output of a certain control. It does more than just a lot of on and off switches, is what my dumb question is.
This is a reduced instruction set, what we used to call them. They don't really call it that anymore. A multi-controller.
Multi-controller, that's what
But it could conceivably do anything your PC does.
that's what I'm saying.
Albeit somewhat slower. This is a 16 megahertz, 8-bit multi-controller. They have, in fact, I've ordered a couple of them, 32-bit ARM Cortex versions of prototype boards, much like the Arduino or the Makina. The Makina was done by the Recharge guys that did the Autoblock amp we've been
Autoblock
talking
amp,
about.
okay.
This has the controller on it. It has a kind of a bolstered power supply system. It has some Zener diodes to protect some of the inputs,
Okay.
which were badly needed. The definitive thing about the Arduino is they take a multi-controller chip and bring all the tiny little pins you see here out to headers around the peripheral of the card. And so you can put other headers in there, wires, to access those pins easily.
Okay.
You see, you couldn't access them at all.
No, I could. No.
You can't even see them.
Yeah, yeah.
Even with readers. These are surface mount chips, and I couldn't solder any of that with your eyes, much less with
My
mine.
eyes couldn't do it either.
And so what they do is break all that out and bring it around the peripheral of the card, and then you can access it. The other innovation, two other innovations that Massimo and the Arduino guys, Arduino was the name of a cafe in Italy where they met to discuss this.
I knew it was Italian. I remember that from earlier discussions.
There was a King Arduino or something in
Arduino.
that area at some point,
Okay.
but this cafe was named after him. Was they put a USB port on there and a bootloader. And they developed an integrated design environment, an IDE, a programming tool chain that would connect to this USB port. And instead of using a JTAG connector or something like that, they used to use to flash some RAM to program the controller, this you can compile the program on a PC and transmit it over USB, and it will load automatically into the device. And when it boots up, it'll run that program.
Okay.
And so it made it much easier to program these multi-controllers and much easier to interface to them hardware-wise.
Now my question is, you have the power supply in, okay, then you have a set of cable units that come out,
You have a USB cable for
a
programming.
USB cable that programs, okay, My question
Communicate with the thing.
to
You can do that
communicate
over
it is,
USB.
how does the motherboard communicate with the devices in the car?
Oh,
That's where I was trying to.
all these pins are inputs and outputs.
So it could go to the charger. It could go to
Well, it could go anywhere, but
the motor controller.
sure.
Yes.
But what you're alluding to with the motor and motor controller,
Can we eliminate some of the other stuff and have our own little motherboard? Is what I'm alluding. I guess. Yeah.
this would be it.
That's what I'm thinking. Yeah.
This, I was talking about Arduino Megas.
Okay.
The Machina, the innovation they bring, is a bigger power supply, a little bit of protection, and most importantly, a built-in controller area network chip, CAN bus.
CAN bus. Yep. I got
So
it.
this will talk CAN bus to
Your network.
the network.
Yep. Okay. Got it.
And you don't need another device, a shield, to do that. It's built into the
Got
main
it.
board.
Okay.
And in fact, pin 1 and 2 of this large connector are CAN high and CAN low.
Okay.
The small connector is for power. They actually, believe it or not, have supported all the pins of OBD2 and all the legacy protocols that are on the OBD2 plug under your steering wheel. I don't care about those, and apparently they don't either, because the library that they made for this is entirely for CAN bus.
Got it.
But the pins are actually exposed. You could develop a library to do one of the legacy
Now,
protocols. But think of this as CAN bus enabled. It has a microchip. It's the name of the company, MCP 2515 CAN bus controller, and they have done a library to allow you to access that. And it will, the chip itself does a lot of things. The library at this point does not actually do all that the chip will do. It will let you transmit and receive frames. The chip actually allows you to mask and filter, so
That-
you only respond to certain frames that are transmitted from certain IDs you specify.
and I think the viewers need to be caught up on that, which is you can have the all running through the network, but the device will determine, the devices or the system will actually stop code information it does not receive and only allow the correct stuff to come through to it instead of having
that chip does that.
that chip
And
does
so
that,
this,
yeah.
as a device, would listen for, let's say, 2 or 3 IDs on that bus that you're interested in.
and the other ones it will just let.
You won't even see them in your code.
Got it.
It won't slow down your atmel because the controller chip won't let it through.
And
You can filter and mask them.
Right.
And so it is an important feature. Unfortunately, it's not implemented in the library, but I have, as I say, I ordered and paid for up front 30 of these boards.
Got it. Okay.
So we will stock them, and that gives them a start. And so they're prone to trying to make me happy with the software, and they've got some talented guys doing that. So they're going to try to do that. I've been playing with the board this week. It has another anomaly in the library. If you try to initialize the chip and you're not connected to a CAN bus, it gets lost in space really badly.
I get lost in space.
Now, I'm trying to develop software, and I haven't coded this for some time, and I'm in there thinking it's me, and I've done it 3 completely different ways now, and I get the same result each way, and it all goes into the can.init subroutine and disappears and gets lost in space. It doesn't.
It goes somewhere.
I don't get an error. I don't get it. It just quits.
Mike,
Gets lost in memory, and so I have been talking to them, and they've been dancing furiously to try to not tell me that they've never really, it never dawned on them to try using the CAN bus if it wasn't hooked up to a CAN bus. Why would you want to do that? Doesn't matter why. This is a matter of form. I ought to be able to write the program and get it to demonstrate errors.
Yeah.
I want to see it not initialized.
Yeah.
And I want to be able to handle that and put an advisory on the USB port that we failed to initialize here. We're not going to talk CAN bus. Well, why would you want to do that? If you were hooked up to the CAN bus, you wouldn't need to.
Yeah. Now you're.
Well, yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
But let's do it my way.
Okay.
Let's handle some of the error situations.
Yeah. Now my,
And so they're going to work on that a little bit.
I have a second dumb question for the viewers. Where are the wires from the other end of this going? Exactly. To whatever device, to the.
This particular thing we're working on, I'm doing a program with Nathan Knoppenberger to have this talk to a TCCH
Charger, that's what I thought. Okay.
so that you can enter the voltage you want it to charge to, and the current you want it to charge at, and the current you want it to quit charging at.
Got it. A
Those
series.
three
Yes.
things.
Yes.
And this little board will make sure it does that.
Yes. Which is yes.
And,
now,
once
I think
you
it's-
set it, it's set. It's in EEPROM, and you don't have to revisit that.
So yes.
It'll
yes.
just work.
In very simple terms, yes, it is a computer system that will
Run that. Chart.
run a set of commands.
But
Charge
I
to this
have
point,
several
turn
of
off at that
our
point.
generalized electric vehicle control unit teams evaluating this board. They get to pick whatever they want to, but I've asked them to look at this at least because it's. I think it's a fascinating board with that interrupt control and that masking and filtering. I believe there's sufficient horsepower in here
Yeah.
to actually do that, and a lot of other things as well. So we're going to be carrying the Makina and publicizing some of the features and techniques to use it because it's essentially CAN bus plus Arduino directed at a car.
And this is going to be in the store. And around, do we have any price range?
Probably about $250, which is quite high for Arduino type stuff. They're typically $45 or $50, but this has the.
It's beefed up.
It is beefed up in a number of ways. The power
And we're going to know how to
supply
use it.
inputs
So.
and the thing. But no, you're free to. I was looking at one today, Olamax or something, Olamax Arduino, which is like a $25 board that has CAN bus and STM32 microprocessor, but it's
I'm
made in Bulgaria.
Bulgaria, not the Ukraine.
And so there's a lot of stuff out there. This is what I would pick to carry in the store because, they've got the Autoblock amp and the Autoblock RPM, and now they have the Makina. This is a company working on instrumentation for electric vehicles, and so it's all eventually going to tie in
It's
together.
going to tie into a computer board at some point.
And
yes.
so I like this board. I'm not too concerned about whether it's $25 or $200. I want it to do what I want to do.
Yes, which is kind of a key in
And,
automobile application.
You need it a little bit directed toward an automotive environment, and you need. I need CAN bus in some rational fashion I can access and code, and there is a CAN shield for the Arduino, but you wind up with two boards then. $50, $60 shield, a $50, $60 thing. Now the housing gets to be a little more complicated and so forth. So that's the takedown on this right now is, and Recharge is not going to give these away, and I don't mind that. So that's, I think it'll be a good value proposition. And it's what I want to use. So I bought a bunch of them. We'll share them on the store. There's certainly, it's not just other ways of doing it. Arduino has set off a firestorm, a cottage industry They're coming out so fast, I can't even follow it.
You Google them, there's
and
several pictures.
Beagle and
Yeah. The Beagle.
Espresso
Yeah.
and all the multi-controllers now get it that they really need to be Arduino. And so for any particular multi-controller chip, somebody is working on a board designed to do these basic things. Bring the pins out to the edge of the board, be an inexpensive board, have a USB port.
That's
and
the
a
only way
tool
I'm going to be able to
chain.
work with
One
it.
guy has got a device, the compiler is online. You don't even have a compiler. You compile it on their website and download it and offload it by USB to this, to the board. But much more powerful. Maple is a 72 megahertz 32-bit microprocessor. This is a 16 megahertz 8-bit processor. And so there's a host of it. I would like,
it doesn't
if
need
I
to do
had
that
the
much.
time to spend some time, my personal choice would be this whole ARM Cortex thing, the 32-bit processors. But in fact, Arduino is doing a DUE, D-U-E, which will be the ARM Cortex processor. That's here's the problem. That processor works on 3.3 volts.
Yeah.
And what you wind up doing is you have these two worlds, 5 volts and 2.2 volts.
Yep,
So
you're
many of the shields for the Arduino won't work on the DUE because it's 3.3 volts. And you have to translate between the 3.3 and the 5. All our automotive sensors, our accelerator pedal, our brake pressure transducer, our map sensor, our math sensor, all work in the 5 volt,
Yep,
0
that's
to
correct.
5 volt
That
realm.
is correct.
All our ECUs are 5 volt devices. It's very awkward for us to go to 3.3 volts and get that back. For example, all our sensors are 5 volts, so we would have to have a separate 5 volt or 10 volt analog to digital conversion chip and then interface it back to the board over a serial port in order just to read a voltage. With this, 0 to 5 volts, you'd simply hook it up.
You got to hook it up. That's right.
And you can read it. Now, the Arduino has a 10-bit ADC. That gives you 1,024 discrete levels to measure 5 volts with. Well, I'd much rather have a 12-bit. That'll give me 4,000.
Yeah.
Or a 14-bit. Give me, you know, many more discrete levels, 16,000 discrete levels that I could then have finer resolution and so forth. So there's things about the Arduino that I don't like, but I didn't design this. I happened to cross it. These guys had taken the Arduino Mega, added CAN to it, and I don't need a separate shield for it.
Okay.
And they have a library. It needs a little work.
Okay.
That's easy to do.
We need a.
They need a little bit of sales to inspire all that, so I bought 30 of them.
That's a good thing.
And,
Keep the business coming to the EVTV store because you certainly do your part helping the business.
What we will do with this is couple them with a TCCH
That's what
charger.
I thought all along, which is something I've been saying.
We need
modulation.
We need a lower cost charger that's still configurable.
And
We have
yes,
48 Bruces. When they're gone,
they're gone. Yeah.
And you know, the TCCH is not in the league with a Brusa, but it's a pretty capable charger at a lesser price. And their CAN bus option is another $75, and suddenly you can control it.
That's
And
what.
we're going to use this to control it. And
There's one thing you want to control. You're charging. Yes, I understand.
I have another viewer video that I want to go to. I don't know how much of it I'm going to go to. It's actually, he's got about 2 or 2.5 hours out ahead of me. Do you remember my dear friend Damien Maguire in Ireland?
Yes.
Damien.
I remember the name. Yes.
Do you recall why you remember him?
I thought he was a movie star or something. Damien.
Well,
McGuire.
he's kind of like the movie star because he took a spanner and melted that puppy.
Yes.
In the name
the
of
spanner,
battery testing.
which they call a wrench in Europe, a span.
Well, he's come over to the dark side.
Okay.
This guy was a headway man, and he had made a very elaborate headway battery pack for a BMW 3 Series.
Okay.
And I just shuddered in horror, but the headways were fairly inexpensive. They appeared to be powerful. I never really warmed up to them. And so I like the big prismatic bricks we use. And in any event, he ordered a couple of CALBs and melted a spanner across them.
I remember that. Yes.
This
Just
week,
famous,
he has expanded to multiple spanners and a pair of vice grips, and has tested these cells to 2,200 amps. It's a thing to behold. And he is sufficiently impressed with the CALBs that he's started a new project with a 5 Series BMW.
There you go.
E39,
We like the
which is
BMWs.
a pretty substantial car. And he is going to put a 13-inch Series DC motor in this beast.
Well, that'll get you to
And,
the golf course over there. and
It'll get you to the golf
very
course
quietly
in
and very
Dublin.
fast. Yes.
And some CALB cells, I'm hoping. We sell those, you know, Damien. And but he has done some further dramatic testing,
The spanner.
and has achieved his goal of putting me to shame.
There you go.
He's hooked up the meters, put them in a bucket of water, and turned
Turn
the
them on.
juice on.
Uh-oh.
Let's take a look.
All right, folks. It's that time again. I think we can all guess what's going to happen here. We need to take it up a notch and find out a little bit better than we did previously just what our trusty CALB grey cell can do. So, to that end, we have set up the cell with the 1500 amp shunt on it and the 20 by 10 copper flat bar straight onto the terminals. This time we've got a bucket of water here, and inside the water, I hope we can see, we have a 20mm spanner this time. I'm trying to destroy the spanners that I use the least, so after 18 I think a 20 is the next big size that generally doesn't get used. So we've got it clamped on one side with a vice grips, and I've got a bit of plastic in there just keeping it from touching the other bus bar. But we'll get another vice grips on that and see what happens. So, as before, we have the JLD 404 measuring current and amp hours. We have another JLD meter there measuring voltage, and we have a Fluke thermometer with a J-type thermocouple on the top of the cell to measure temperature. You can see the temperature is currently 11.9 degrees centigrade and dropping, just because it's quite cold out here now in the garage. So we are going to pretty much apply a very large load to this cell. And we're going to see what the voltage, current and temperature end up as. So I'm going to try and get the camera set up to give me the best possible view of the meters, which with my marvelous camera here is just not exactly the easiest thing in the world to do. Let's try that, might be a bit better. There we go. I think we're pretty good at that. If I could straighten it up a tad. There we go. So we can now see the voltage and current that we're going to be monitoring from the cell. And if I don't die on the first attempt, or don't get my hands blown off or something, then we'll see if we can monitor another vice grips. Need a little bit of luck because this could get very ugly. This could end up being my last transmission, folks. I'll try and tighten the vice grips a bit. Well, there's 2000 amps. Things are warming up on a rather grand scale here in the old water butt. Okay, I'm going to stop the test at that and we go under 2 volts on the cell. Oops, silence please, JLD, thank you. So, that was scary. Okay, that was very scary. But we did manage to hold 2000 amps out of the cell. So, the risk of getting myself in trouble, beat that one, Jack. Okay. What I'm going to do now is, we know that a 20mm spanner will give us 2000 amps. So let's see if we can get down around about the area that I'm interested in, which would be around 1000 amps, 1200 amps. Now, just looking at the display on the thermocouple, we're up to 13.8, 13.9, now coming up to 14 degrees centigrade. So our cell has definitely warmed up, as you might reasonably expect after that'd be what, 10C would be 1800 amps, so probably around 11C capacity. Right, so we'll be back with a smaller spanner after these words from our sponsors. Okay guys, we're back. As we can see, our temperature on the cell is peaking at just around 22 degrees centigrade. And we have now set up with a 9/16 spanner. So, without further ado, and pontificating from me, let's crank up the amps. We're on current, are we? Yeah, we're on current on the JLD. So I'm going to get this insulator out of here now, which is never easy, of course, underwater. There we go. Oops. Oh dear. Oh, there's a kind of a plasma, kind of an underwater plasma going on here. Very interesting. Wow. Well, there's 1500 amps anyway. This underwater plasma is quite fascinating. Well, there you go, guys. 9/16, okay, gets you 1500 amps with a little bit of plasma going on. I might as well. Let's have a look at that bit of plasma just for a bit of fun and games there. Yeah, there's the plasma. Quite interesting. Back to the meters. So yeah, 1500 amps doesn't seem to be any real problem for this. You get closer to those meters. Sorry about the beeping, by the way. I have yet to remember how to turn off that feature on the old JLD. Well, she's holding 1500 amps at 2.5 volts. Certainly certainly getting the water warmed up. Let's turn off that beeping. Silence JLD. The water is, well, there's kind of kettle sounds coming out of the water, guys. Wow. The plasma is still plasmaing. The 9/16 I think is definitely the load of choice for your battery testing, by the way. Cell temperature on the casing is now just gone over 24.5 degrees Celsius. So I think that will definitely have you up to the speed of sound at this stage now if you were accelerating with a large pack. Well, the water's warming up quite nice. Handy for giving my hands a wash when I'm finished this test. I wonder what the amp hours look like with that kind of power coming out. Wow. Now I put 170 amp hours into this cell yesterday, so it's dumping them out at quite a rate of knots there. Now 27 Celsius on the cell. Let's go back to current. We're still just over 1,500 amps. There's interesting kettle sounds coming out of there. We're at 28.5 Celsius on the cell. There's now steam starting to emanate from the water. The plasma is still plasmaing. You know, plasma reactor and all that. Oh, I think it's safe to say that these grey cells will make a car move. We're now at 30 degrees centigrade on the cell casing. Oh, plasma just stopped. Oh well. I guess something created a bit of resistance in there, so silence please, JLD, thank you. I guess that's the end of our 9/16 test. Let's see if we can get it out of there now, that'll be the next challenge. But that said, at least the water is warmer, so I won't be freezing my hands off. Ooh, the water is a lot warmer. There we go. Okay. Yeah. So there you go, and we're back to 3.2 volts. Let me see if I can get that spanner out of there. Ooh, hot, 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 hot. Wow. The spanner is actually in surprisingly good condition, apart from that jaw there that had a bit of plasma action on it. So, you see, I knew there was another use for these spanners that aren't much good for acting on bolts and threaded components. Cell temperature 24.9, still climbing, just hit 35. I think that that's us good to go, folks. Clocked quite a few amp hours out of the cell, but it still seems voltage just sprung right back up. So yeah, that worked well. So what I'll do is I'll come back when that temperature peaks out. We'll just record that, and then I'll shut the hell up and find myself another 59 of those cells somewhere. Alright guys, just to wrap it up, our peak cell temperature is looking like about 45 degrees Celsius on the side of the case. It's kind of leveling out at that and starting to drop back. So that is it for the latest in the CALB high current discharge testing. So we'll see how we get on as the build progresses, and as we get more of these cells in. I'm going to need a total of 64 of these cells, believe it or not. 60 for traction and 4 for 12 volt systems. And yeah, so we'll see what we get, and Happy New Year to one and all. Well folks, I suppose you could say it's that time of year again when Sanity Claus brings us a present. And he came a little bit earlier this year for me and delivered a 2001 model BMW 5 Series 520i E39. And this particular land yacht is equipped with the 2.2 litre 6-cylinder petrol M54 B22 engine. And we are going to be embarking on a saga that's going to see that self-same engine and its associated components removed from this vehicle and replaced with an electric drivetrain, associated electronics and a traction battery. Now I guess why do another car? Well, there's a couple of reasons, some generic and some that apply to me. More generic ones are, I suppose, that when you get one car finished, you tend to kind of feel as if you kind of feel as how should I put this? Well, Jack calls it the empty nest syndrome, so I suppose that's about as good as I can get. But you just feel as if you don't have something to do, which for me isn't a very good condition to be in. I've always liked the E39. What I don't like about it is the fact that it's a gas guzzler and it's very high tax on it. So what we're going to be doing to it should help to alleviate those two particular problems. Now, the electric drivetrain components I've been doing a little bit of work on over the past few weeks. So I'll run through that in a minute. I spent the last 6 months moving house. So we're now in a new production facility here, which should make things a bit easier. Quite an arduous affair, and I'm just really starting to get my life in some sense back on track now. So that's kind of held me back in what I could do with a lot of things, EV conversions being only one of them. So right, let's run through some of the drivetrain components and what we're going to be putting in there instead of that 6-cylinder piece of junk. Now, first thing I did back during the summer when I decided on the E39 was I went looking around and decided to pick up a gearbox. So up there on the bench, should be able to see, we got ourselves 5-speed manual gearbox out of the same type of car that we have here. Now what I've been able to do with that is use that for organizing the adapter plate. I'm not sure if you can see that there. We've got a big lump of 25mm thick aluminium that's going to be used to make the gearbox to motor adapter plate. Now you can see there, just hopefully right in the middle of the shot, you can see the two end bells off the motor. And if I pan left a little bit and zoom her back out a touch, we'll see the actual motor casing itself. This motor is one that I've had for some time. It actually came from the UK. There's a 13-inch 12 kilowatt 72 volt DC series wound main traction motor out of a very large side loading forklift. So it was in a very poor state of repair and cleanliness when I got it. And I'll be honest, I didn't do a lot until recently. Stripped it apart and I started really, I suppose, optimizing it for its new application and cleaning up, repainting and that. So it's got a grey primer coat on it at the minute. I'm going to get the camera over here if I can, and we'll try and get some better shots of what we have going on here. So basically, cleaned the entire frame up, cut off all the old bracketry, and cleaned everything thoroughly out, and got a primer coat on there just to stop any corrosion while I'm working on it. Now down here, which is the commutator end of the motor, we can see that we have the air inlets here for the brushes. Now what we're going to be doing here is sealing up all of this with a band and a gasket. We'll have one of the EVTV electric turbochargers pumping air through that, because I've removed the fan from the armature. Fortunately it was a bolt on, so that's not going to be going back on. Prefer to have external forced air cooling. And we can see there we've got the field coils and the shoe poles for the field. The other modification that we're going to be doing to this motor will be replacing the existing brushes with some of the Hellwig red tops. So I'm talking to them at the minute, hopefully going to firm up on that in the new year to get some of those brushes made for this particular motor. But this motor here is a beast. It's heavier than I would like, but it seems to be built with a lot of over capacity in it, which is exactly what we need. So I'll do a more detailed segment on the motor at another stage. This is just an introductory. We get the project started off. Now, what I've got going on here at the minute is the engine is on its last legs. It has suffered from multiple overheats and various oil starvation problems and so on. So it's rather sad, but it still runs, which is all we need for the minute. Because this particular vehicle is like a lot of modern cars in that it's got a fly-by-wire throttle. It's got a fully integrated management system that talks over CAN bus to the instrument cluster and the body computer and the immobilizer and all these other fun packed things that tend to cause people a lot of fear. Now, compared to the E36, which although it did have electronic fuel injection and engine management, it was a completely self-contained entity in that I could just tear the thing out along with the engine, and I had basic signals to the rest of the car, as in 12 volt square wave fed the tachometer and so forth. So what we have to do here is going to be a slightly different approach. So while I'm working on the motor adapter plate gearbox combo there, I've decided to do a little bit of investigation on the car itself and just get my feet wet in terms of what's going to be needed to make this work. So this is a manual gearbox car, which makes things a little bit easier. I think ultimately I'll tackle an automatic, probably a 7 Series, but I'm not trying to get too far ahead of myself. So, okay. Basically, drawing a lot here on what I've seen the guys on EVTV doing, particularly with the Cadillac Escalade, and I was very impressed with what Jack was able to achieve with the engine management system on that car. So I basically started off in a similar vein to what he did, and got my wiring diagrams here on the laptop. Hopefully going to make some sense out of this now. So what started off by doing, of course the sun has to be on the screen, is to identify the wiring for the crankshaft position sensor. Now, very similar to the Escalade, the crank position sensor on the M54 engine is a toothed wheel, which from the best of my knowledge has 58 teeth on it with a gap of 2. If anyone knows this to be different, please feel free to correct me. And it's buried inside the engine, bolted onto the number 6 counterweight. And you can just about see on the side of the block, down just below the starter, where the sensor is. Now, as you can hopefully see here, this symbol here identifies the crank position sensor. It's got 3 wires, plus 12 volts comes from a just a switch 12 volt signal. It's got 2 wires that go to the ECU, or as they call it in BMW, the DME. So one of these wires carries a signal, and one of them ground. We have pins 21 and 8 on the ECU block number 3, I believe. So, well, actually I think it's, C block, I think they call it. So I went ahead and took off the pollen filter and the cover and got in at the ECU harness. So I'm going to hope we'll be able to see in here. One of these days I am going to get a decent camera, but that's not going to be today. So get a bit of extra light on the subject. Now, what we have here is the MS43 DME module. That's the kind of silver box that you see there in the middle of the shot. And I've got the 2 wires, yellow and brown, being the signal, and ground from the crank position sensor. I've got these tapped into a multimeter here that's measuring frequency, and over here, just on a table in front of the car, we've got a scope set up, which is giving us the waveform that's being. Let's see if we can get in on this. It's giving us the waveform that is being created by the crank position sensor. So what I'm going to do, just so we can see what's actually happening here, is I'm going to start up, and we'll be able to see the waveform hopefully on the scope. And I've also got a piece of software on the laptop here. It's free software. called BMW Scanner 1.4 version, and this lets me read some live data over the OBD port, and it's quite helpful because I've noticed here that what seems to be the case is it's almost, I think, 1 hertz per RPM. So what I'm going to do is start the car up, and we'll see the waveform, see the frequency on the meter, and see the RPM on the live data here, and you'll also hear the sounds that engine shouldn't make. So here we go. Okay, so gonna connect to the DME. Got all that. We're going to go for live data. And we're not happy with that. Typical. Well, let's go have a look at our scope. Seeing as the computer is not playing nice with us. Now, what I'm hoping we can see here, I might just let this camera down a bit. There we go. Might be a little bit easier to see it. What I'm hoping we're able to see without the sun in our eyes is that we got a kind of a square wave going on here. Now, it's difficult to see based on the scope shot whether or not there's a pulse missing from that. So that's something I'm going to have to investigate further. There nearly has to be. But if there is, I can't really see it. Now that right there is a 5 volt peak. It goes between ground and 5 volts. And according to the frequency, about 730, 740 hertz at the minute. Now the scope can confirm that. So what I want to try and do, see if I can get this computer to work. I actually turned it off with the thing connected, so I don't think it was that happy with me. Yeah, it's not happy with me. Gonna have to do the old USB jiggle. Absolutely hate USB ports. Never had any success with it. Try again, take 2. There we go. Typical Microsoft. Turn it off and turn it on again and it works. There's the DME. Here's our live data. So, let's see if I can get this to work now. Get the old camera up here and we'll see what we get. Because the crank position sensor is by far the most important signal that you need to feed your car. or you need to feed your car to convince it that it's still got an engine in there. Now, probably with my marvellous camera I can't really see that too well, so what we're going to do, put the camera off the tripod and just do a bit of Blair Witch action here. I'm taking this all in one shot because I don't fancy doing any video editing today. I'm not really in the mood for fighting with the various programs. So, there's a setting on this. Here we go. Now, see, we've got engine speed, RPM, about 740, 750 RPM going on there. If I pan over to my meter in hertz, see they're very close together. So I find that a little bit interesting. I haven't done the maths on this yet, but I'll do so later on. And we got our scope telling us again here that we've just got a square wave, but I can't really define whether there's a pulse missing from it or not. Let's say there nearly has to be. So again, if anyone out there has any familiarity with the E39 crankshaft sensor, please feel free to leave me a message, because I'm going to need to be generating this particular signal. Now, so that's about where we're at, and we can obviously hear the high-tech sounds coming out of that thing. So let me go ahead and shut this off, and we'll run through a few more areas. Now, other things we have on this car that wouldn't have had on the E36 is air conditioning. Now, air conditioning isn't something you need a lot of in this country, but when you need it, you tend to need it. So, hopefully see in there, bolted on the side, we've got ourselves an air conditioning compressor. Various pipes and 12 volt feed to the electromagnetic clutch. Now, I've been looking at some options for this, and so far the one that I'm finding most acceptable to me at the minute is the Toyota Prius air conditioning pump. So I'm going to be getting my hands on one of those and doing some experimentation with a VFD, see what we get from that. The brake vacuum is again going to be the Audi A6 vacuum pump. It's the same type that I eventually ended up with on the E36. It's performed flawlessly. Kicks on for 2 or 3 seconds, perfect brake pedal, hardly hear it. It's doing what it was designed to do, and so that's the solution for the brakes. And the power steering on this car is again hydraulic, and we've got the reservoir there, and we'll be substituting the belt driven pump for one of the electric pumps, most probably the same again as I had on the E36, which will be the Toyota MR2 12 volt pump. Haven't had any trouble with that, it just works. So again, this is where we've been having a little bit of a mess about with the ECU in there. more focusy action. I love this manual focus crap. So I'm just in on the 2 wires there, signal and ground for the crank position sensor. And there's our trusty DME in there. So big bundles of wires going in, but it's not all that scary actually. This would be where the transmission control module would be installed if this was on automatic. So that is broadly about where we're at, just at the start of the project here. Be looking at a motor controller of at least 1,000 amps, probably 12 to 1500. So I'm getting some initial componentry organized for that, IGBTs, film capacitors, all that kind of stuff. We're going to be looking at a minimum of a 12 kilowatt charger. It'll have 3-phase and single-phase input capability on it. And the battery pack for this car is going to be something in around 170 volts of the new CALB grey cells. So we've got a hell of a project ahead of us. So as I said, this is just to get your feet wet day, which it is wet actually, of course, this being Ireland. So yeah, stay with us, and you're going to see loads of mistakes, guarantee you that. But hopefully we'll have a bit of fun and have ourselves an electric land yacht by the time we're finished. Because I have to say, driving this car back home, it really is a land yacht. It just glides over things that would be jarring the fillings out of your teeth in most other cars. And fun figure to finish with today. So with a driver and a full tank of horrible petrol, all 15 gallons of it, this thing weighs in at 2,005 kilograms. That is just over 2 metric tons, sports fans. So it's going to take some power to get this beast to move, but I think we're in the right arena. Stay with us. More soon.
And so that's
Damien McGuire.
Good job, Damien. That'll make that bacon
You are now a
sizzle.
movie star. I believe he is a star.
He's got a kettle going.
The Damien McGuire movie.
Not only can he build EVs
Electric in the EV, yes.
and test batteries, but now he can make tea in a New York
In a
minute
New York minute, there are some efficiencies, yes.
Yes.
All that power.
with a single CALB cell
There you go.
at 2,200 amps and
Yeah.
at 2.5 volts at 1,500 amps. That's 4,500 watt tea kettle. He
There you go.
can warm your cup of tea up.
Warming up that tea over there.
Pretty quickly, and so, but he's starting another fascinating build, and this time using some batteries that I think he'll see considerably better success with. I think those CALB 180s, if he puts that in a BMW 5 Series, he's going to have a going machine.
He will, yes.
And so that's,
And it'll go far too. So
Richard, that's kind of the show this week.
that's all for first show of the year. So
I'd love to do something dramatic.
let's leave the stage early, so there'll be
but
one more.
After 3 years of doing shows, I don't know what I'm going to do different. I don't think we're going to go viral again this week.
Okay, I'll accept that.
It's pretty much the same old group of computer guys who are playing with cars.
I'm telling you, no, when you're at a dinner party and people say, I get it. When guys are out, when a truck driver shows up and he says, I want an electric off-road vehicle, something's happening. There is a little bit of a fire out there brewing. I think it's some of this stuff. When a regular guy can plug in a few parts and make that car go, and they figure out they don't have to go to the gas station. It's a matter of time, and there's plenty of vehicles for people to work with. So
I hope you're right, Richard.
I'm
When
praying
I go
that's
to
my
a dinner
vision.
party, they ask if I'm the eccentric guy that lives under the bridge,
Hmm.
the troll.
Teletubby. They call me
Yeah.
they're like,
You're telling
man, I'm like, I told that joke, and
you tell him you just look fat.
I said,
TV.
you look fatter on TV, and I just need to lose 10, 15 pounds. You know what my wife said?
I found them.
25. She said, you need 20. I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. So we bought some Sensa.
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 What's Sensa?
Sensa makes you not like your food as much.
Is that right?
It just kind of makes you not like food, basically.
I really like food.
I do too.
I don't want to not like it.
I
In
know.
fact, it's dinner time.
Let's go.
Get up and go.
Amen.
We'll see you all next week.
Okay.